Adriana's voice cut through the clatter of silverware, sharp and trembling. "We mean nothing to you, huh?" Her eyes welled with tears, her hand clutching the edge of the table as if grief alone would keep her upright. Olivia leaned forward, chin tight, lips pursed in judgment. "God, Adriana, you're cold. A daughter doesn't treat her family this way." Daniel didn't raise his voice. He never did. Instead, he gave that slow, deliberate shake of his head, the kind that always carried more weight than words. The disappointment in his eyes felt heavier than the sigh that followed. I sat back in my chair, steadying my breath. For years, I had swallowed moments like this pretending silence was peace. But tonight, their script unraveled. My hand slid into my bag, fingers closing around the phone I had tucked there hours earlier. I drew it out and placed it on the table with deliberate care. Adriana sniffled confusion flashing in her eyes. Olivia's brows drew together in a tight knot. "Trust me," I said softly. "I care." I pressed play. The room shifted. Familiar voices echoed back. Olivia's sharp critiques about my food. Adriana's sighs dripping with disdain. Daniel's casual mutters that I should just let it go. The recording filled every corner, a mirror they couldn't escape. Adriana's tears vanished as quickly as they had come. Olivia's mouth pressed into a thin, brittle line. Daniel's gaze broke, drifting to the floor. I let the silence stretch, then slipped the phone back into my bag. My pulse slowed steady now. This wasn't sudden. This had been building for years, and if they wanted to know how it got here, they needed to start where it all began. That memory came rushing back. It started innocently enough. I offered to host Thanksgiving in my little Savannah home. I was proud of the place hardwood floors. I had refinished myself a dining room just big enough to stretch out a table for 12. I loved filling the air with the scent of thyme and lemon, hearing laughter spill from the kitchen to the porch. That first holiday, I felt like the glue that held us together. From there, it snowballed. Christmas, Easter birthdays, even Sunday dinners when someone didn't feel like cooking. My house was the venue. At first, I told myself it was love. I didn't mind rising at dawn to baste turkeys or stringing lights until my fingers cramped. Seeing everyone gathered around, smiling over a meal I'd poured my energy into felt worth it. But slowly things shifted. The thank yous grew shorter, then disappeared. The hugs at the door turned into quick nods. Instead of asking, they began assuming. A message would come from Adriana. "We'll be over for dinner on Sunday." Not a question, just a fact. Olivia arrived with her own spices tucked into her purse, ready to fix my recipes. Daniel always sat in his usual chair, never lifting a hand to help, always reminding me with a glance that I had chosen this role, so I should bear it quietly. Even the moments I tried to reclaim, suggesting maybe someone else host, or that we go out instead, were brushed aside. "You do it best," Adriana would say, with a saccharine smile, as if flattery erased the weight of expectation. Year after year, I carried it, waiting for gratitude that never returned. Love became labor, and labor became duty. By the time another Christmas approached, I was already questioning whether my effort meant anything at all. And that year, I would find my breaking point. It didn't matter what I served. Olivia always found something to needle at. If the soup was too thick, she claimed it lacked refinement. If the bread was crusty, she'd sigh about how her mother's had been softer. Once, after I spent hours making a butternut squash risotto, she wrinkled her nose and muttered, "Heavy food." "Adriana, you should think lighter next time." Every word landed like a pinprick, small but sharp enough to sting. Adriana had her own way of cutting me down. She didn't criticize outright, at least not with her mother's precision. Instead, she leaned back in her chair, let out a dramatic sigh, and said something like, "Well, I guess this will do." She'd push food around her plate as if she were enduring punishment rather than enjoying a meal I had worked all week to plan. Daniel, of course, never defended me. He just sat at the head of the table, shoulders slouched, chewing slowly. If I ever looked to him for support, he would shrug as though my feelings were too trivial to acknowledge. It was his silence that cut deepest, confirming that in his eyes, I had only one purpose: to keep the machine of family gatherings running. Sometimes the table grew even heavier. Ethan, a distant cousin, brought friends without warning faces I didn't know. Taking seats at my table, helping themselves to food, I hadn't prepared with them in mind. The uninvited never apologized. They were simply folded into the evening as if my labor stretched endlessly. Caleb Holt, my neighbor, noticed the rhythm one Sunday when I invited him over for leftovers. "You're too generous, Adriana," he said, watching me pack food into containers for people who hadn't even thanked me. I laughed it off, insisting it was just family. But his words lingered long after he left, echoing louder with each gathering. The truth was already gnawing at me, even before the Christmas that finally broke me. That December, I tried harder than ever. I told myself that if I could make the evening flawless, maybe it would finally shift something. I spent days planning the menu, choosing each dish with care. A perfectly roasted turkey orange glazed carrots, homemade bread, warm from the oven pies, rolled and crimped by hand. I polished the silverware, pressed the linens, and decorated the tree until it looked like something out of a magazine. Every corner of the house sparkled with effort. When the family arrived, they didn't even glance at the work I had poured myself into. "No, thank you." "No, wow, this looks beautiful." Just coats tossed over chairs and complaints about the cold. Olivia's first words were to wrinkle her nose at the mashed potatoes. "You didn't use heavy cream?" she asked, tone sharp as ever. Adriana sighed dramatically and slid into her seat. "Guess we'll just have to pretend to like it." "Huh." She glanced at Daniel, who gave one of his usual non-committal shrugs, the silent approval she always sought. Then, as if the moment needed a final blow, Adriana strolled into the kitchen, opened my refrigerator, and pulled out a store-bought apple pie I had picked up as a backup. She held it high like a prize and laughed. "Well, at least this will taste good." Olivia chuckled. Daniel's mouth curved into the faintest grin. Even that tiny betrayal felt like a blade. Something inside me cracked. My heart pounded, my hands trembled, but my voice stayed steady. Without a word, I turned off the oven, unfastened my apron, and walked into the living room. I bent down, unplugged the glowing Christmas tree, and watched the lights die in an instant. The room went still. Forks paused in midair. Adriana blinked, startled, her smugness faltering. "What are you doing?" she whispered. I looked at her, then at all of them. "I'm done," I said. "I'm not hosting anymore ever." The silence that followed was heavier than all the years of criticism combined, pressing into every corner of the house. And in that silence, I knew there would be no turning back. The silence after my declaration lasted only a breath before Adriana's voice rose again, dripping with false sorrow. "So that's it. We mean nothing to you. After everything, you're just going to walk away." Her tears looked rehearsed, her voice too sharp to be genuine. Olivia gasped, one hand flying to her chest as if I'd struck her. "How could you say that, Adriana?" "We're your family. You don't just quit family." Even Daniel, who so often hid behind his silence, finally spoke. "Cold," he muttered, shaking his head. "How could you be so cold?" I almost laughed at the absurdity of it. After years of biting remarks, uninvited guests, and endless labor that went unnoticed, I was the one branded unfeeling. Their outrage wasn't about losing me. It was about losing their convenience. I straightened, the weight of decision settling comfortably on my shoulders. "You think I don't care?" I said evenly. "But trust me, I care enough to keep receipts." Their brows knit in confusion as I reached into my bag and pulled out my phone. My thumb tapped the screen, and a familiar chorus filled the room. Olivia's condescending tone. "You didn't use heavy cream." "Well, that's different." Adriana's mocking sigh. "I guess we'll just have to pretend to like it." Daniel's careless murmur. "Just let it go, Adriana." Each word echoed louder than the last, undeniable and inescapable. The color drained from Adriana's face. Olivia's lips pressed so tightly they nearly disappeared. Daniel looked away, eyes fixed on the floor. I let the recording play until the final smug laughter faded. Then I slipped the phone back into my bag and looked at them one by one. "Still think I'm cold." No one spoke. The only sound was the faint hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen, a reminder that dinner still sat waiting untouched. I walked to the closet, pulled my coat from its hanger, and slid it on with a deliberate calm. My hands no longer shook. My pulse was steady, almost serene. At the doorway, I paused just long enough to say, "Dinner's in the fridge." Help yourselves." Then I stepped outside the night air sharp against my skin and closed the door behind me. For the first time in years, I left them to face the silence without me, and I didn't look back. The messages started that same night. Adriana demanding an explanation. Olivia insisting we needed to talk. Daniel's short-clipped lines reminding me of duty. I ignored every one of them. When the calls came, I let them ring out. Silence was my only reply, and it unsettled them more than any words could have. Weeks passed. Christmas ended without me, and for the first time in years, they were forced to fend for themselves. I heard pieces of it through whispers that reached me in town. The turkey was undercooked. Adriana forgot to defrost the pies. Olivia snapped at Daniel in front of everyone, her voice carrying sharp enough to quiet the table. By New Year's, they were already afraid. Easter was worse. Adriana attempted to host, declaring she'd do it better than Adriana ever did. Instead, she burned the ham, overcooked the vegetables, and watched as Olivia tore into her in front of cousins and neighbors. Adriana, always dramatic, ended the night in tears, telling everyone she'd never host again. The fractures spread quickly. Olivia took her turn trying to show she was still the matriarch who could hold it all together. She forgot to set the table properly, and Daniel muttered about it within earshot of the guests. Adriana mocked her cooking with the same biting tone she once used on me. What once was casual cruelty toward me became weapons they turned on each other. I didn't lift a finger. I spent those months pouring energy into my work, walking by the river in the evenings, even sharing coffee with Caleb now and then. One afternoon, when I told him about the messages I still ignored, he smiled faintly and said, "You taught them respect by absence. Sometimes silence is louder than any fight." And he was right. For once, they were forced to see what life looked like without me holding everything together. It didn't stop them from trying to pull me back in, though. The first attempt came on a gray afternoon when Olivia reached out with an invitation of her own. Olivia chose a small cafe downtown, one of those places with chipped teacups and quiet corners. She was already there when I arrived, stirring her tea with slow, practiced grace. Her smile was too sweet, her eyes sharp as glass. "Thank you for coming," she began, as if I had agreed to something noble. I only nodded, waiting. She wasted no time. "I was thinking maybe you could host Christmas again this year. I know you needed a break, but you've had time now, haven't you?" I almost laughed. After everything, she was still framing it as if hosting was a privilege she bestowed on me. "No," I said simply. Her smile froze. A flicker of something ugly crossed her face before she smoothed it over. "Adriana, we're family, and family makes sacrifices. The children always loved coming to your house." Her voice softened on that last part, a needle meant to pierce my heart. I leaned forward. "I sacrificed enough. I cooked, cleaned, decorated, and listened to all of you insult me. I don't owe you another holiday." Her lips pressed thin. She muttered something about misunderstanding, then quickly changed the subject, pretending we were just catching up. I let her, but I knew the game wasn't over. That night, Daniel came home pale, asking why I'd been so cruel to her. Apparently, Olivia had called him crying, spinning the meeting into another tale of my coldness. I didn't argue. Instead, I pulled out my phone, opened the recording I'd made at the cafe, and pressed play. Her own voice filled the room. "Family means sacrifice. The children loved your house." Every manipulative note rang clear. Daniel sank into his chair silent. Olivia's mask had cracked again, and yet even stripped bare, she wasn't finished. I knew something was wrong the moment I pulled into the driveway. Olivia's car sat crooked near the porch. Adriana's sedan pressed close behind it. The blinds in the front window were parted just enough to tell me they'd been watching for me. When I opened the door, the three of them were already seated in my living room as if they owned it. Adriana perched on the edge of the couch, eyes red but defiant. Olivia sat with her legs crossed, hands folded in her lap like a queen on her throne. Daniel lingered in the armchair, his shoulders heavy, his face unreadable. "We can't keep doing this," Adriana started, her voice wavering. "You're punishing us." "Punishing you," I set my bag down, my voice flat. "For what?" "For having to host your own dinners." Olivia leaned forward, her eyes sharp. "You're tearing this family apart. All because you don't want to do your part anymore." I laughed once, cold and short. My part. For years, I carried every holiday, every meal, every insult you threw my way. And now you call it punishment when I stop. Daniel shifted uneasily. Adriana, please. Can't we just move on from this? I stood straighter, looking at each of them in turn. No, I will never host again. Ever. The words landed like stones, heavy and final. Adriana's mouth fell open, a small gasp escaping. Olivia's composure cracked her jaw, tightening her fingers, gripping her knee. Even Daniel lowered his gaze, the weight of inevitability sinking in. For the first time in years, I felt the balance tip away from their control. And as I looked around my own living room, I realized it was time to reclaim it for good. The day after their ambush, I walked through my house and saw it differently. The oversized dining table, once stretched to fit every demand, suddenly looked more like a monument to years of exhaustion than a piece of furniture. The cabinets lined with serving platters and dishes felt less like tools of hospitality and more like chains that had bound me to a role I no longer wanted, so I began to let go. I called the local donation center and arranged for the platters and extra sets of china to be picked up. When the men carried them out, I felt lighter, as though each piece they removed took a bit of weight off my chest. Then I listed the dining table for sale. A young couple came to see it, their eyes bright at the thought of hosting their first Thanksgiving. I handed it over without a second thought, happy to see it belonged to someone who still carried hope instead of obligation. In its place, I bought a small round table just enough for 4. On its first night, I invited Caleb and 2 close friends from work. We shared simple food, laughed easily, and lingered long after the plates were cleared. No criticism, no guilt, no unspoken debts. For the first time, joy sat at my table instead of duty. As the night wound down, I realized my home finally reflected me, not the version my family demanded. And in that quiet freedom, I began to see the outline of who I was becoming. But peace once found doesn't mean others stop trying to steal it. Months passed and the calls stopped coming as often, though their silence carried a bitterness I could almost taste. From neighbors and mutual acquaintances, I heard small pieces of their unraveling. Olivia sulked through gatherings she attempted to host. Her perfectionism met with indifference. Adriana complained loudly to anyone who would listen about the burden of responsibility she claimed I had abandoned. Daniel retreated into quiet resignation, fading into the background the same way he always had. Meanwhile, I thrived. My home, stripped of its old demands, became a place of peace. I filled weekends with dinners among friends, evenings walking along the Savannah River, mornings spent in quiet reflection with a book and coffee. The air felt lighter without the constant weight of expectation pressing down on me. Sometimes I thought of the old days, of the years I had given away to keep their world running smoothly, the laughter I chased, the gratitude I hoped for, the validation that never came. I realized how much of myself I had set on fire just to keep them warm. One evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the river in shades of gold, I stopped at the overlook and let the breeze move through me. My life was no longer defined by their demands, their criticisms, or their entitlement. I was free finally, irrevocably free. I spent years burning to keep them warm. I whispered to the water, steady and certain, never again. In the end, is family defined by those who share your name or those who honor your worth? Standing by the Savannah River, I let the weight of years dissolve into the current. The lesson carved itself into me: family isn't just blood, it's respect earned and returned. For too long, I burned myself out to meet their demands, mistaking duty for love, silence for peace. Their criticism and entitlement drained me, but I learned my worth isn't tied to their approval. By stepping away, I reclaimed my home, my time, my joy. Caleb's words echoed, "Silence can teach respect, louder than arguments." I saw their chaos unfold without me proof. I wasn't the problem, but the glue they took for granted. True family honors your effort, not exploits it. I chose myself, trading their expectations for a life that reflects who I am. The river's flow reminded me I am enough. Never again will I sacrifice my light for those who refuse to see it. Freedom came not from their change, but from my courage to let go.
The reservation was for 7 o'clock at Bellissimo. the upscale Italian restaurant chain that had locations in 12 states. My mother's 62nd birthday and my sister Rachel had insisted on somewhere nice for once. I arrived 10 minutes early, wearing a simple black dress I'd purchased 3 years ago. Nothing flashy. Nothing that screamed money. Just clean lines and good fabric that would last. Rachel was already there with her husband David, both dressed like they were attending a gala. Rachel wore a designer dress with the label prominently displayed, and David had on what was probably a $2,000 suit. They sat at the table looking at their phones, Rachel's new Hermes bag placed carefully on the chair beside her where everyone could see it. "Oh, good you're here," Rachel said when she spotted me. She didn't stand up. "We already ordered wine. The expensive one. Hope that's okay." "Of course." My brother Jason arrived next with his girlfriend Melissa. Jason worked in pharmaceutical sales and never let anyone forget it. Melissa was a dental hygienist who'd recently started getting lip fillers and posting about them constantly on Instagram. "Wow, bellissimo," Jason said, looking around appreciatively. "Splurging tonight, Rachel? It's Mom's birthday. She deserves it." Rachel smiled. "Besides, David just closed a huge deal. We can afford it." Mom arrived last, looking slightly overwhelmed by the restaurant's elegant interior. She'd worn her good dress, the one she saved for weddings and funerals. Dad had passed away 4 years ago, and Mom still wasn't comfortable with expensive things. She'd grown up poor and never quite shook the feeling that nice restaurants weren't for people like us. "Oh, honey," Mom said to Rachel, "this is too much. We could have gone too." "Nonsense, Mom. You only turned 62 once." Rachel pulled out Mom's chair. "Besides, we wanted somewhere special." I sat down quietly at the end of the table. The seat they always gave me, the one by the kitchen door where servers rushed past constantly. Close enough to be included, far enough to be forgotten. The server appeared with menus. "Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Bellissimo. Can I start you off with some drinks?" Jason ordered a $90 bottle of wine. Melissa got a cocktail. David ordered scotch. Rachel asked for sparkling water with extra lemon, not lime. The server looked at me. "And for you, ma'am?" "Just water is fine." "Thank you." Rachel laughed. "Water. Of course." She turned to the server. "My sister is very practical." The server smiled politely and left. "So, Amber," David said, using the tone people use when they're about to ask a question they already think they know the answer to. "Still doing the restaurant consulting thing?" "Yes." "Must be tough in this economy. How many clients do you have right now?" "It varies." Rachel leaned forward. Amber's being modest. "He probably has, 2 or 3 restaurants you're advising. That's not bad for someone who—" "I do okay," I said quietly. The menus arrived. I watched everyone's eyes widen at the prices. Appetizers ranged from $18 to $34. Entrees started at $42 and went up to $89 for the signature osso buco. "Jesus," Jason muttered. "Didn't realize this place was this expensive." Rachel's smile tightened. "It's fine. It's Mom's birthday." Mom was looking at the menu with visible distress. She turned it over, maybe hoping to find a cheaper section on the back. "Maybe I could just get a salad." "Mom, no," Rachel said firmly. "Order whatever you want." But I could see Rachel calculating in her head. 5 people ordering expensive entrees, plus the wine they'd already ordered, plus appetizers and dessert. This dinner was going to cost close to $600. And I could see the exact moment Rachel decided I was going to help pay for it. "Amber," Rachel said, her voice suddenly friendly, "you'll split this with us, right? I mean, it's Mom's birthday. We should all chip in." I'd been expecting this. "Of course." "Great." The relief in Rachel's voice was obvious. "We can just split it evenly. 5 ways." Except Rachel and David had already drunk half a bottle of $90 wine. And I knew exactly what was coming. Rachel would order the most expensive thing on the menu, then suggest we split the bill equally. It was her standard move. The server returned. "Are we ready to order?" Rachel went first. "I'll have the Chilean sea base. And another bottle of that wine we had. Actually, make it 2 bottles." Jason ordered the Wagyu ribeye. Melissa got the lobster ravioli. David ordered the osso buco. Mom, still looking uncomfortable, ordered the second cheapest pasta on the menu. The server looked at me. And for you. I was scanning the menu when Rachel interrupted. Oh, Amber. Maybe you should look at something more moderate? I know restaurant consulting doesn't pay as much as corporate work. Everyone turned to look at me. The prices here are pretty steep, Jason added. No shame in getting something simpler. The pasta is supposed to be good. Actually, Melissa said, trying to be helpful, I think there's an Olive Garden like 10 minutes from here. If you're more comfortable with. This place is too expensive for you, Rachel said, her voice dripping with concern that wasn't really concern at all. Stick to fast food. Seriously, Amber, we won't judge you for eating somewhere else. Mom looked mortified. Rachel, don't. I'm just being realistic, Mom. Amber works in restaurant consulting. She probably knows better than anyone that places like this are outside her budget. Rachel turned back to me with a smile. There's no shame in it. We all have different income levels. I smiled and kept browsing the menu. I think I'll have the branzino. That's $68, David said. I know. Rachel's expression shifted slightly. Amber, seriously. You don't have to try to keep up with us. We make good money. You make consultant money. It's different. I'm aware. Then maybe you should. She stopped talking because the regional manager was approaching our table. James Mitchell was 52, had been with the company for 8 years, and currently oversaw all 47 Bellissimo locations in the Midwest region. I'd promoted him to regional manager 14 months ago after the previous RM retired. Good evening, he said, his voice professionally warm. Then he saw me and stopped walking. Miss Chin. I gave him a small smile. Hi, James. His eyes went wide. Ma'am, I'm so sorry. I didn't know you were dining with us tonight. If I'd known, I would have prepared. It's fine, James. I'm just here for my mother's birthday. Of course, of course. Happy birthday, ma'am, he said to Mom, who looked confused. Then he turned back to me. Miss Chin, why didn't you tell them you own all our locations? The table went absolutely silent. Rachel's mouth opened slightly. Jason's hand froze halfway to his wine glass. David actually dropped his napkin. I'm sorry, Rachel said. What did you just say? James looked confused by their confusion. Miss Chin owns Bellissimo. All 47 locations in my region, plus the other 106 locations nationwide. He turned to me. Did you want your usual table? I can have it prepared in just a few minutes. And the chef would like to prepare something special if you'd like to. That won't be necessary, James. We're fine right here. Are you certain? Because your usual table has much more privacy and... Here is perfect. He nodded, still looking uncertain. Of course. Please let me know if you need anything. Anything at all. He turned to the server who'd been taking our order. Marcos, Miss Chen's entire party eats free tonight. Add it to my comp account. Yes, sir. James left. Marcos stood there awkwardly, his pen hovering over his notepad. The silence at the table was deafening. Finally, Jason spoke. Did he just say you own this restaurant? The chain, I corrected. All 153 locations. That's... Melissa did the math in her head and gave up. How is that possible? I bought it last year. Rachel's face had gone white. You bought an entire restaurant chain. Yes. How much does a restaurant chain cost? Jason asked. This one was $47 million. Mom made a small sound. I couldn't tell if it was a gasp or a cough. $47 million. David repeated slowly. You have $47 million. I had enough for the down payment. The rest is financed. But yes. Rachel was staring at me like she'd never seen me before. But you're a restaurant consultant. I consult on restaurants I'm considering acquiring. Then I acquire them. Then I hire people to run them. How long have you been doing this? Buying restaurants? About 6 years. Bellissimo was my largest purchase, but I own 4 other chains. Fast casual concepts mostly. 2 breakfast places, a burger chain, and a Mediterranean fast casual operation. The server, Marcos, was trying very hard to pretend he wasn't listening to every word. Ma'am, he said carefully, should I still take your order? Or would you prefer? Take the order, please. Everything is planned. The branzino for you? Yes. And Marcos? Make sure my family orders anything they want. Appetizers, desserts, wine. Whatever they'd like. Of course, ma'am. After Marcos left, Rachel found her voice again. This is insane. You can't possibly own this chain. You drive a Honda. A paid-off Honda that gets excellent gas mileage. You live in that tiny apartment. A paid-off condo. 1,800 square feet. It suits me. Jason was scrolling on his phone. Holy shit. Bellissimo pulled in $67 million in revenue last year. $71 million, I corrected. The article you're reading is from 18 months ago. And you own it. I own 78% of it. The remaining shares are held by the executive team as performance incentives. Mom hadn't said anything. She just sat there looking at me like she'd discovered I had superpowers. David, who worked in finance, was doing calculations. If you own 78% of a company generating $71 million annually, and if the profit margins in this industry are around 6 to 8%, then you're personally taking home about $4.2 million per year from Bellissimo alone, I said. Plus revenue from the other chains. How much total? Jason asked. Last year? About $8.3 million. Rachel's wine glass slipped. She caught it before it fell, but wine splashed onto the white tablecloth. She didn't seem to notice. $8 million. Per year. Last year. This year is tracking higher. Melissa's voice was small. And you let us. We were telling you about our expenses. Our mortgage. Jason's car payment. And you just listened, I said. As your family. And I wanted to hear about your lives. The appetizers arrived. Burrata for the table, calamari, carpaccio. Marcos set them down carefully, asked if we needed anything else and retreated quickly. No one touched the food. Amber, Mom said softly. It was the first time she'd spoken since James revealed everything. Honey, why didn't you tell us? Would you have believed me? Rachel made a sound that might have been a laugh or a sob. No. God, no. If you told us you owned Bellissimo, we would have thought you were delusional. Exactly. But why? Jason asked. Why keep it secret? Why let us think you were barely getting by? I never said I was barely getting by. You all assumed it. David was still staring at his phone. The business journals call you the silent acquirer. They say you've revolutionized casual dining acquisition strategy by focusing on undervalued chains with strong fundamentals. The writers at Restaurant Business Weekly have a flair for drama. There's an entire article about how you bought Bellissimo for $20 million under market value because you identified cost-cutting opportunities no one else saw. The previous owners were operating at 73% efficiency. I knew we could get to 89% within 18 months. We hit 91% last quarter. Rachel was shaking her head slowly. I told you to stick to fast food. You did. I said this place was too expensive for you. You did say that. Oh my God. She buried her face in her hands. I'm the worst person alive. You're not, I said gently. You just made assumptions based on incomplete information. I told the woman who owns this restaurant chain that she couldn't afford to eat here. Jason started laughing. It began as a chuckle and built into genuine laughter. Rachel told our sister, who owns 153 restaurants, to go to Olive Garden. It's not funny, Rachel said, but her lips were twitching. It's a little funny, Melissa said. Even David cracked a smile. You did suggest she eat somewhere else. I'm never living this down, am I? Probably not, I agreed. Mom was still quiet. She reached across the table and took my hand. You did this yourself? All of it? Yes. Since you were, what? 26. I bought my first restaurant at 27. A struggling breakfast place that was 2 months from bankruptcy. I turned it around, sold it for profit, and used that money for the next acquisition. And now you're 33. With 5 restaurant chains, 17 individual restaurant locations not part of chains, and a consulting firm that advises other buyers. You're rich, Jason said. I'm comfortable. You make $8 million a year. You're rich. I suppose that's fair. The entrees arrived. The branzino for me, the sea base for Rachel, the ribeye for Jason. Everything looked perfect because I'd hired the best executive chef in the region and paid him $240,000 a year to maintain quality control. We ate in silence for a few minutes. Then Rachel set down her fork. I need to apologize, she said. Not just for tonight. For 4 years of this. Rachel. No, let me say it. I've spent years thinking I was better than you. More successful. More sophisticated. I bragged about David's salary and our house and our vacations. And the whole time you were building something, I finished. Why didn't you tell us? I considered the question carefully. Do you remember when I bought my first restaurant? The breakfast place? Yes. I was so excited. I came to family dinner and told everyone I'd just purchased a restaurant. Do you remember what you said? Rachel went pale. Oh no. You said, that's cute. Like playing business with real money. Jason said I'd lose everything within 6 months. David asked if I'd considered the tax implications, implying I was too stupid to think of taxes. And Mom looked so worried that I immediately changed the subject. Mom's eyes filled with tears. I remember. I thought you were making a terrible mistake. You all did. So I stopped talking about it. I ran my businesses, made my money, and lived my life. And at family dinners I just listened. While we bragged, Jason said quietly. While you talked about your lives. Which you had every right to do. But you let us think, Melissa started. I let you think what you wanted to think. I never lied. I just didn't correct your assumptions. David shook his head. This is going to sound crazy, but I'm actually impressed by that. From a strategic standpoint, there's something brilliant about just letting people underestimate you. It wasn't strategy. It was self-preservation. The table fell quiet again. Then Mom squeezed my hand. I'm proud of you, she said. I should have said it 6 years ago, but I'm saying it now. I'm so proud of you. Thank you, Mom. Your father would have been proud too. That hit harder than I expected. I had to blink back tears. Rachel took a long drink of wine. So just to be clear, when I suggested we split this bill 5 ways, I was essentially asking a multimillionaire to pay for my expensive dinner. Essentially, yes. And you were going to do it. Of course. It's Mom's birthday. Jason laughed again. You know what? I kind of love this. We've been treating you like the poor relation for years. And you could have bought and sold all of us at any time. I don't want to buy and sell you. You're my family. Even though we've been condescending assholes? Yes. Melissa spoke up. Can I ask a question? It might be rude. Go ahead. Why do you still come to family dinners? If we treated you that way, why keep showing up? I thought about it. Because despite everything, you're still my family. And maybe part of me hoped that eventually, you'd see me for who I actually am. We see you now, Mom said softly. The dinner continued. The conversation shifted, carefully at first, then more naturally. Jason asked about the acquisition process. David wanted to know about profit margins and growth strategy. Melissa asked if I ever got to try all the food at my restaurants. Rachel was quiet for most of the meal. Finally, as dessert arrived, tiramisu for the table on the house, she looked at me. I'm sorry, she said. For all of it. For assuming. For judging. For treating you like you were less than. I forgive you. Just like that. Just like that. Why? Because holding grudges is exhausting. And because you're my sister. She wiped her eyes. I'm such an idiot. You're not. You just learned something tonight. What's that? That success doesn't always look like what you expect it to look like. James appeared again as we were finishing dessert. Miss Chin, I wanted to personally ensure everything was satisfactory. Everything was perfect, James. Thank you. Will you be visiting other locations soon? The Florida regional manager mentioned you might tour that area next month. Probably. I'll confirm dates with corporate. After he left, Jason shook his head. This is surreal. You're like a secret restaurant mogul. I prefer the term strategic investor in casual dining operations. That's way less catchy. We left around 9:30. The parking lot was full and I watched my family walk to their cars. Rachel's Mercedes. Jason's BMW. David's Audi. And my Honda Civic parked at the back of the lot. Rachel stopped when she saw it. You could buy a Ferrari. I could buy a dealership. But you drive a Civic. It's reliable. She laughed. You're the weirdest rich person I've ever met. I'm the only rich person you've met. Fair point. Mom hugged me extra long before she left. Same time next week for Sunday dinner? I'll be there. Will you tell us more about your businesses? If you want to hear about them. We do. I do. After everyone left, I stood in the parking lot for a moment. My phone buzzed. A text from Rachel. Thank you for not making us feel like total idiots tonight. Even though we deserved it. I texted back, you're welcome. See you Sunday. Another text came through. From Jason this time. Quick question. Are you hiring? I smiled and put my phone away. The next morning, I woke up to 17 missed calls and 34 text messages. All from family members. Not just my immediate family. Cousins, aunts, uncles, people I hadn't heard from in years. All suddenly very interested in how I was doing. I responded to Mom's text and ignored the rest. Sunday dinner that week was different. Rachel arrived early and actually hugged me. Jason brought a bottle of wine, not expensive but thoughtful. Even David seemed less condescending. So, Jason said as we sat down to eat, I've been researching restaurant acquisitions. It's actually fascinating. It can be. How do you identify which chains are worth buying? For the first time in 6 years, I talked about my work at a family dinner. Really talked about it. The analysis, the strategy, the challenges. Everyone listened. Actually listened. Rachel asked questions. David offered insights from his finance background. Even Melissa contributed thoughts about restaurant marketing from a customer perspective. Felt strange. Good strange. Halfway through dinner, Mom's phone rang. She glanced at it and frowned. It's Aunt Carol. She's called 3 times today. She texted me too, Rachel said. Asking about you, Amber. Me. She heard about the restaurant thing. She wants to reconnect. Rachel made air quotes. Also, she mentioned that Uncle Jim's construction business needs investors. I sighed. Here we go. Over the next 2 weeks, I heard from 27 relatives I hadn't spoken to in years. All with business ideas. All needing investors. All suddenly remembering how close we used to be. I said no to all of them. The only family dinner invitation I accepted was from Mom. And Rachel, who'd started calling every few days just to talk. Not about money or business. His life. I've been thinking, Rachel said during one call, about how much time we wasted. Wasted how? Being jealous of things that didn't matter. I was so obsessed with looking successful that I never stopped to think about what success actually means. And now I think maybe success is having enough. Not needing to prove anything to anyone. That's very wise. I learned it from my little sister who drives a Honda and owns 5 restaurant chains. 3 months after the birthday dinner, James called me. Miss Chin, we have a situation at the downtown location. What kind of situation? Your sister's here. She's arguing with the manager about a bill. I closed my laptop. I'll be right there. When I arrived, Rachel was standing at the host's stand, her face red, arguing with Marco, the assistant manager I'd hired 6 months ago. Rachel. She turned. Amber. Thank God. Tell this guy who I am. What's going on? Marco looked relieved to see me. Miss Chin, I apologize. This woman claims she's your sister and should eat for free, but we have no record of. Wait, I said. You want to eat for free because you're my sister? Rachel had the decency to look embarrassed. Well, I thought, you own the place. And I'm family. So I just assumed. I looked at Marco. Did my sister make a reservation? No, ma'am. Did she inform anyone of her relationship to me when she arrived? Not until we presented the bill, ma'am. I turned to Rachel. Pay your bill. What? You heard me. Pay your bill. Full price. With tip. But you're my sister. Which is exactly why you pay full price. I don't give family members special treatment. It's bad business practice. Amber, come on. It's just one meal. It's the principle, Rachel. You don't get free food just because we're related. That's not how this works. She stared at me. Then slowly she started to smile. You're right. That was completely out of line. She pulled out her credit card and handed it to Marco. I apologize. Please add 25% gratuity for your trouble. After she paid, we sat at the bar. I ordered 2 glasses of wine. I'm sorry, Rachel said. I don't know what I was thinking. You were thinking like someone who just discovered her sister is rich and figured that might come with perks. It was stupid. It was human. But Rachel, this is important. My money is my money. Not family money. I earned it. I manage it. And I get to decide how it's used. I understand. Do you? Because in the next few months, people are going to come to you asking for favors. Loans. Investments. They'll say, talk to Amber for me, or put in a good word. And you need to be ready to say no. I will. I mean it. This money doesn't change our relationship. We're still sisters. But I'm not an ATM. She nodded slowly. You know what? I'm glad you said that. Because I was starting to think about asking you to invest in David's new business idea. Don't. I won't. He can get a business loan like everyone else. We clinked glasses. 6 months after the birthday dinner, Mom called with news. You'll never believe what I did. What? I retired. I sat up. Mom, that's wonderful. When? Today was my last day at the hospital. 40 years of nursing, done. How do you feel? Terrified. Excited. Confused. She laughed. I always thought I'd work until I dropped dead. But then I thought, why? Your father's gone. You kids are grown. What am I proving? Nothing. You don't have to prove anything. That's what you said that night at dinner. About success being enough. It stuck with me. We talked for an hour about her retirement plans. Travel. Gardening. Volunteering. All the things she'd always said she'd do someday. Before we hung up, she said, Amber? Yes. Thank you. For what? For showing me that it's okay to just be. To not constantly chase other people's definitions of success. You're welcome, Mom. A year after the birthday dinner, I received an invitation. Rachel had enrolled in business school. I figured if I'm going to talk about restaurants and acquisitions at family dinners, I should actually understand what I'm talking about, she explained when I called her. I'm proud of you. I'm 38 years old and going back to school. I must be crazy. You're never too old to learn. That's what David said. Actually, he's been amazing about it. Really supportive. Good. Amber, can I ask you something? Of course. Do you think you'll ever tell them? The extended family? Everyone who's been calling asking for money. Tell them what? That you're not going to give them anything. That they need to figure it out themselves. I think they'll figure it out on their own when I keep saying no. You're not even tempted? To swoop in and solve everyone's problems. No. Because solving their problems wouldn't help them. It would just make them dependent. When did you get so wise? When I realized that the best thing anyone ever did for me was not give me money when I needed it. It forced me to figure things out myself. 2 years after the birthday dinner, Bellissimo opened its 200th location. The celebration was held at the flagship restaurant downtown, with executives, managers and staff from across the country. My family was there too. Mom, Rachel, Jason. All dressed up, all proud. During my speech, I looked out at the crowd and saw my sister in the front row taking notes. She was doing a business school project on acquisition strategy. I saw Jason, who'd quit his pharmaceutical sales job and was now working as an operations consultant. Not for my companies but for his own clients he'd built relationships with. I saw Mom, retired and happy, wearing a dress she'd chosen because she liked it, not because it was expensive. And I realized something. The best revenge isn't making people feel bad about underestimating you. It's showing them what's possible when someone believes in themselves, even when no one else does. After the event, Rachel pulled me aside. I have something to tell you, she said. What? I'm graduating in May. Top of my class. Rachel, that's incredible. And I got a job offer. At a restaurant consulting firm. It's not yours, she added quickly. I wanted to do this on my own. I'm so proud of you. I learned from the best. He hugged me. Thank you, Amber. For everything. For showing me that success doesn't have to look like what I thought it did. For being patient with me when I was awful. For never giving up on family even when we gave you every reason to. You're welcome. As I drove home that night in my Honda Civic, I thought about that birthday dinner 2 years ago. About Rachel telling me the restaurant was too expensive. About the look on everyone's faces when they realized who I was. It had been satisfying, yes. But not because of their embarrassment. It had been satisfying because finally, they saw me. Not as the poor sister. Not as the unsuccessful one. Not as the person who needed their pity or their advice. Just as me. Amber. The quiet one who built an empire while everyone else was looking the other way. And that, I realized, was worth more than all the restaurants in the world. The business dinner was at Morton's Steakhouse in Manhattan. Dad's quarterly networking event where he brought together his corporate friends and business associates. He'd insisted I come, though he'd made it clear I was only invited because Mom had guilted him into it. "It'll be good for you to meet successful people," he'd said on the phone. "Maybe someone can help you find a real career." I was 27 years old. I'd been running my logistics software company for 5 years. But to Dad, if you didn't work in an office wearing a suit, you weren't successful. I showed up in dark jeans, a black turtleneck and boots. Practical, comfortable. The kind of outfit I wore when I was visiting warehouses or meeting with operations managers. Dad's face tightened when he saw me at the restaurant entrance. "That's what you're wearing? Nina, this is a professional dinner." "I'm dressed fine. You look like you're going to unload trucks." "Sometimes I do unload trucks. When I need to understand the workflow." He closed his eyes briefly as if praying for patience. "Please tell me you're not going to talk about your warehouse job tonight." "It's not a warehouse job. It's a software company that optimizes logistics operations." "Right. Your company." He made air quotes. "Just try not to embarrass me, okay?" We walked into the private dining room where 8 people were already seated. Dad's usual crowd, corporate executives, finance guys, a few lawyers. My sister Jessica was there too, 29 and working as a marketing director at a luxury brand. She was in full corporate armor. Designer suit, expensive jewelry, perfect makeup. She looked me up and down and smirked. "Casual Friday came early this week?" "It's Tuesday." Exactly my point. Dad started making introductions as we took our seats. "This is my youngest daughter, Nina. He's between opportunities right now. I run a logistics software company," I corrected quietly. "She works at warehouses," Dad clarified to the table, his tone apologetic. "We're hoping she'll transition to something more professional soon." One of his friends, a man in his 50s named Robert, smiled politely. "What kind of work do you do at the warehouses?" "I don't work at warehouses. I develop software that optimizes supply chain operations. We work with warehouses, distribution centers, fulfillment operations." "She helps them organize inventory," Dad interrupted. "It's entry-level logistics work." I could have corrected him. Explained that my company had 127 employees, $340 million in annual revenue, and clients that included 3 of the 5 largest retailers in North America. But I'd learned over 5 years that Dad didn't want to hear it. He decided when I dropped out of Columbia Business School that I was a failure. Nothing I said would change his mind. Jessica leaned over to whisper loudly to the woman next to her. "She's been doing this warehouse thing for years. Mom and Dad are mortified." "I can hear you," I said calmly. "Good. Maybe you'll finally get the hint." The waiters brought appetizers. The conversation shifted to stocks, real estate, business deals. I ate my salad quietly, checking my phone periodically for updates from my CTO about the system deployment we were managing tonight. "Nina, phone's away," Dad said sharply. "It's rude." "I'm working." "You're at a dinner." "I'm monitoring a major deployment for a client. We're implementing new software across 47 distribution centers tonight." Robert raised an eyebrow. 47 centers? That's a significant operation. It's the 4th largest retailer in the country. The deployment has to be coordinated precisely or it could cost them millions in lost productivity. "Nina has an active imagination," Jessica said with a laugh. "She's been claiming to run this huge company for years, but she works out of her apartment and drives a Honda. I work out of an office in Long Island City. 12,000 square feet. And I drive a Honda because it's reliable." "Sure you do," Jessica said. "Just like you manage teams and consult with Fortune 500 companies." I set down my fork carefully. "Why would I lie about that?" "Because you're embarrassed about your actual job?" One of the lawyers spoke up. "What's the name of your company, Nina?" "Flow State Systems." He pulled out his phone, typed briefly, then stopped. His eyebrows rose. "The Flow State Systems? The logistics optimization platform?" "Yes. My firm represented one of your competitors in an acquisition last year. They were bought specifically because they couldn't compete with your technology. He looked at Dad. Your daughter founded Flow State? Dad's smile was frozen. Nina's been working on some software project. Flow State did $340 million in revenue last year, the lawyer continued, still scrolling on his phone. They're the leading platform for warehouse automation and supply chain optimization. Nina, you're the founder. Founder and CEO. The table had gone completely silent. Jessica was staring at me. That's not, you don't. I started it 5 years ago, I said calmly. We began with small distribution centers, proved the ROI, then scaled to larger operations. We now work with 18 of the 50 largest retailers in North America. Dad's friend Robert was on his phone now too. There's an article here from Supply Chain Quarterly. It says Flow State has revolutionized logistics software. And he looked up at me. It says the CEO is Nina Brennan. That's you. Yes. But you work in warehouses, Dad said weakly. I visit warehouses to understand operations firsthand. I also spend time in our office managing a team of 127 people. Software engineers, data scientists, operations specialists, sales team, customer success. 127 employees? Robert interrupted. Nina, what's your company valued at? I hesitated. The valuation wasn't public yet. We were in the middle of Series C negotiations and the numbers were under NDA. I can't disclose that right now. But there is a valuation. You've raised institutional funding. Series A was $12 million from Lightspeed Venture Partners. Series B was $45 million from Sequoia Capital. Series C is closing next month. The lawyer was scrolling rapidly. Sequoia Capital invested in you? Nina, they're one of the top VC firms in the world. They backed Google, Apple, Oracle. I know who they are. They did extensive due diligence before investing. Jessica's face had gone pale. You raised $45 million? That was Series B. Series C is significantly larger. How much larger? Robert asked. I can't say. It's not public yet. Dad was still frozen, staring at me like I'd grown a second head. Nina, if this is true, why didn't you tell us? I tried. For 5 years. Every time I explained what I was building, you called it a hobby or a phase. You told your friends I was working entry-level warehouse jobs. You said I was between opportunities. But you never showed us proof. You never asked to see proof. You saw that I visited warehouses and drove a Honda and decided I was failing. You never once asked to visit the office, meet my team, or review the financial statements. Because you were always so secretive. Because every time I mentioned Flow State, someone made a joke about it. You called it my warehouse thing and changed the subject. You told me to get a real job. Why would I keep trying to prove myself to people who'd already decided I was unsuccessful? The TV mounted in the corner of the private dining room had been playing financial news on mute. Suddenly, someone turned up the volume. And now we go to our exclusive interview with one of tech's most exciting young CEOs, the anchor was saying. I glanced up at the screen and my stomach dropped. It was me. The interview had been filmed 2 weeks ago in our Long Island City office. Bloomberg Technology had done a profile on logistics software companies, and they'd wanted to feature Flow State. I'd agreed to a 15-minute interview, assuming it would air late at night or online only. But here it was. Prime time. On the TV in the room where my family was currently processing the revelation that I wasn't actually a warehouse worker. Meet Nina Brennan, the anchor continued, CEO and founder of Flow State Systems, the logistics software company that's transforming supply chain operations across North America. The screen cut to me in our office, standing in front of our operations center where real-time data from hundreds of warehouses displayed on massive monitors. We started Flow State because traditional warehouse management systems weren't keeping pace with modern logistics demands, my recorded self was saying. E-commerce had exploded, but the software running distribution centers was still designed for the pre-internet era. We saw an opportunity to completely reimagine how inventory flows through supply chains. The Bloomberg interviewer asked about our growth. The camera panned across our office. Software engineers at standing desks, data scientists reviewing algorithms, operations managers on calls with clients. We've grown from 2 people in a shared office space to 127 employees across 3 offices, I said in the interview. Our software now manages over $12 billion in annual inventory flow for our clients. 12 billion. Dad whispered at our table. On screen, the interviewer was asking about funding. You've raised significant venture capital from top-tier firms. Can you talk about your latest round? My recorded self smiled. We're currently closing our Series C round. We can't disclose the exact amount yet, but it's the largest logistics software funding round of the year. It values FlowState at just over $1.3 billion. The table erupted. Billion. Jessica's voice cracked. Did she say billion? On screen, the interview continued. At 27, you're one of the youngest founders to reach unicorn status. That's a $1 billion valuation for our viewers. What's next for FlowState? We're expanding internationally. We have pilots running in the UK and Germany. We're also developing AI-powered predictive analytics that will allow warehouses to anticipate demand shifts weeks in advance. The goal is to eliminate inefficiency entirely from supply chains. The interviewer leaned forward. Your company is now worth $1.3 billion. You own 68% of the shares. That makes your net worth roughly $880 million. How does it feel to be approaching billionaire status at 27? I watched my own face on screen. Calm, professional, slightly uncomfortable with the wealth question. The valuation is exciting because it means we can invest in the technology and expand our team. The personal wealth aspect is secondary to the mission. We're trying to solve real problems for companies that move physical goods. Every percentage point of efficiency we add to their operations means lower costs for consumers and less waste in the system. The interview concluded with footage of one of our client warehouses. Automated systems, optimized workflows, our software managing everything seamlessly. Nina Brennan of FlowState Systems, the anchor said as the segment ended. One of tech's rising stars, proving that the future of innovation isn't just in social media and consumer apps. It's in the unsexy but essential work of moving products efficiently. The TV was muted again. Nobody at our table spoke. Robert broke the silence first. Nina, did that interview just say you're worth $880 million? On paper. Until the Series C closes and the valuation is official. You're almost a billionaire, the lawyer said slowly. At 27. The company is valued at over $1 billion. I own 68%, so yes, my stake is worth roughly that amount. Dad was still staring at the now muted TV. That was you, on Bloomberg, talking about your billion-dollar company. Yes. And we had no idea. I tried to tell you. Jessica found her voice, though it shook. You let us think you were working in warehouses. I do work in warehouses. I spend at least one day a week in client facilities, understanding their operations. But I also run a technology company with 127 employees and $340 million in annual revenue. Both things are true. But you never corrected us. I did. Constantly. You didn't want to hear it. Robert was scrolling on his phone again. Nina, there are dozens of articles about you. TechCrunch, Wall Street Journal, Forbes. They're calling you one of the most successful young founders in enterprise software. I'm aware. Forbes has you on their 30 under 30 list for enterprise technology. You won Logistics CEO of the Year last month. You've been a keynote speaker at 3 major industry conferences this year alone. Dad's face had gone from white to red. Why didn't you tell me any of this? I did, Dad. Christmas, I mentioned the Forbes list. You said it must be for a different Nina Brennan because your daughter worked in warehouses. At Thanksgiving, I talked about the conference keynote. You said it was probably a small regional event. At Mom's birthday, I mentioned we'd raised Series B funding. You changed the subject to Jessica's promotion. That's not... He stopped. Did I really? Every time. For 5 years. Jessica was reading from her own phone now, her face getting paler. There's an article here from Fortune. Nina Brennan, the warehouse worker who built a billion-dollar software empire. It says you spent a year working in distribution centers before founding FlowState. You actually did work in warehouses. I did. I needed to understand the problems firsthand before I could build software to solve them. I worked night shifts at 3 different warehouses, took detailed notes on every inefficiency, interviewed hundreds of workers about their challenges. That's actually brilliant, Robert said slowly. Most tech founders never leave their offices. You went directly to the source. It seemed obvious to me. How could I build better software without understanding the actual work? The lawyer was shaking his head in apparent awe. Nina, do you know how rare this is? A 27-year-old building a profitable, high-growth enterprise software company in an unsexy industry? Most founders your age are burning through VC money trying to build the next social media app. You've built something that actually generates massive revenue. Logistics software isn't glamorous, but it's essential. Every product people buy online passes through systems like ours. Dad's phone started ringing. He glanced at it, then looked at me with a strange expression. That's Charles Morrison. He's on the board at Columbia Business School. The school I dropped out of? He probably saw the Bloomberg interview. Dad answered the call. Charles, hello. Yes, that was my daughter. Yes, flow state systems. No, I didn't realize the scale either. He listened for a moment, his face getting redder. She what? A major donation? How much? He went silent. 7 figures? For the entrepreneurship program. He looked at me. When did you? Last year, I said quietly. They asked if I'd contribute to the new entrepreneurship center. I wrote a check for $1.2 million. Dad covered the phone. You donated over $1 million to Columbia? They're building a center to help students who want to start companies instead of following traditional paths. It seemed important. He went back to the phone call. Yes, Charles. I'm very proud. Yes, we should definitely talk about having her speak to students. I'll check with her and get back to you. He hung up and stared at me. The dean of Columbia Business School wants you to give the keynote at their graduation ceremony next spring. I know. They reached out last month. I haven't decided yet. Jessica set down her phone. How is this possible? How did you build a billion-dollar company in 5 years without any of us noticing? You weren't paying attention. You decided I was a failure because I dropped out of business school and got my hands dirty in warehouses. Nothing I said could change your minds because you'd already written the story about who I was. But if we'd known, would it have changed anything? Would you have treated me differently if I'd shown you the Forbes list or the funding announcements or the client roster? Or would you have found other reasons to dismiss it until some external authority like Bloomberg confirmed I was legitimate? Silence. I think, Robert said carefully, they would have dismissed it. People usually do when success doesn't look the way they expect it to. Dad's hands were shaking slightly. Nina, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I completely misjudged everything. I thought you were wasting your potential. I know. If I'd known you were building this, you should have believed me when I told you. You shouldn't have needed Bloomberg to confirm it. You're right. You're absolutely right. He looked around the table at his business friends, all of whom were now looking at me with respect and fascination. Everyone, I need to apologize. I've been telling you all for years that my daughter was struggling, working dead-end jobs, refusing to get serious about her career. I was completely wrong. Nina is apparently more successful than everyone at this table combined. Dad, it's not a competition. No, it's important. I need to own this. He turned back to me. I'm proud of you. Not because Bloomberg interviewed you or because you're worth $880 million. I'm proud because you saw a problem, figured out how to solve it, and built something meaningful. And I'm ashamed that I didn't see it until it was on national television. Jessica spoke up quietly. I'm sorry too, Nina. I've been horrible. Calling your work a hobby, mocking you at family dinners, telling people you were unemployed when you couldn't make events. I was jealous of the attention you were getting even though I thought you were failing. Now I realize you were actually succeeding beyond anything I'd ever accomplish. Jess, you're doing great in your career. I'm a marketing director making $180,000 a year. You're about to be a billionaire. There's no comparison. Different paths. Different definitions of success. Robert's phone buzzed. He looked at it and laughed. Nina, I just got a text from the CEO of my company. He saw the Bloomberg interview. He wants to know if you're accepting new clients. He says our logistics operations are a disaster and he'll pay whatever it takes to work with Flow State. Tell him to have his operations team reach out through our website. We evaluate every potential client carefully to make sure we're a good fit. You're going to make him apply through your website? We have a process. Just because he's the CEO of a Fortune 500 company doesn't mean he gets to skip it. The lawyer was grinning now. I like you. You're not impressed by titles or wealth. You just care about the work. That's what matters. My phone buzzed. A text from my CTO, deployment complete. All 47 centers online. 0 errors. Client is ecstatic. This is going in the case studies. I smiled and typed back, excellent work. Tell the team they're getting bonuses. This was flawless. Good news. Robert asked. The deployment I mentioned earlier. It's complete. 47 distribution centers running on our software with 0 downtime. The client will be able to process Black Friday orders 30% more efficiently this year. That's happening right now, while we're at dinner. The work doesn't stop for dinner. My team's been monitoring the deployment for the past 3 hours. But it's finished now and they crushed it. Dad was quiet for a moment. Then, can I visit your office sometime? See what you've built. You want to visit? I want to understand what you do. Really understand it. Not from Bloomberg or Forbes but from you. I should have asked years ago. Hey. Thursday afternoon works if you're free. I can give you a full tour, introduce you to the team, show you the software in action. I'd like that. Jessica raised her hand tentatively. Can I come too? Sure. I'm sorry I called you embarrassing. You're the opposite of embarrassing. You're incredible. The rest of dinner was surreal. Dad's business friends peppered me with questions about flow state, venture capital, growth strategies, hiring, technology trends. They treated me like a peer, or more accurately like someone they wanted to learn from. Robert asked if I'd speak at his company's leadership conference. The lawyer asked if I needed legal counsel for the Series C closing. Another executive asked if I'd consider joining his company's board as an advisor. I politely declined most of it. I had enough on my plate. When dinner ended, Dad walked me to my Honda in the parking garage. That's really your car? He asked. Yes. You could afford anything. A Tesla, a Mercedes, whatever you want. I don't need anything else. The Honda is reliable and efficient. It gets me where I need to go. That's very mature for 27. I learned it from watching you actually. You always taught us not to waste money on status symbols. To value substance over appearance. Remember? He smiled sadly. I taught you that, then spent 5 years judging you for living by it. Yeah. I'm sorry, Nina. Really, truly sorry. I know. And I appreciate it. But Dad, the apology doesn't erase 5 years of dismissal. It's going to take time to rebuild trust. I understand. I'll do whatever it takes. I unlocked the Honda. Start by actually visiting the office on Thursday. Learn about what we do. Meet my team. See the work firsthand instead of just reading articles about it. I'll be there. I drove back to my apartment in Astoria, a modest one-bedroom that cost $2,400 a month. I could have afforded a penthouse in Manhattan or a house in the suburbs. But this place was close to the office, quiet and perfectly adequate. The Bloomberg interview was already generating reactions. My phone was full of messages from investors, clients, potential hires, journalists requesting follow-up interviews. Our marketing director had texted that website traffic was up 400% and we'd received 50 new client inquiries in 2 hours. But the message that mattered most was from my CTO. The team is celebrating at a bar near the office. You should come. They want to thank you for the bonuses. And for building something we're all proud to work on. I smiled and texted back, give me 20 minutes. First round is on me. I changed into jeans and a t-shirt, my actual casual wear, not the professional version I'd worn to dinner, and headed to the bar. My team was there. Software engineers, data scientists, operations specialists, salespeople. The people who'd believed in flow state when it was just an idea, who'd worked crazy hours to make it real, who'd trusted me when I was a 22-year-old dropout with no track record. They cheered when I walked in. To Nina, someone shouted. The warehouse worker who built a unicorn. Everyone laughed and raised their glasses. My CTO pulled me aside. How did dinner go with your family? They saw the Bloomberg interview while we were at the restaurant. Oh God. How bad was it? My dad's friend asked if I was worth $880 million. My sister realized she'd been calling me embarrassing while I was building a billion-dollar company. It was surreal. But vindicating? A little. Mostly just sad. They should have believed me years ago. He nodded. For what it's worth, we believed you. Everyone on this team believed in the vision before Bloomberg, before Forbes, before the billion-dollar valuation. We knew you were building something special. Thank you. That means more than any news interview. I stayed at the bar until midnight celebrating with my team. These people, who'd trusted me when my family didn't, who'd worked impossible hours to make Flow State succeed, who'd believed in logistics software when everyone else was chasing sexier industries, they were my real validation. When I finally got home, I found a text from Mom. Your father told me about dinner. About the interview. About everything. Nina, I'm so sorry. I should have listened. I should have believed you. Can we talk this week? I typed, Thursday after Dad's office visit. You can both come. Her response was immediate. Thank you. We love you. We're so proud of you. We should have been proud all along. I set the phone down and looked around my modest apartment. The same place I'd lived for 3 years, long after I could have afforded better. I'd stayed because it was practical, because the money was better spent on the business, because luxury didn't matter as much as the mission. Tomorrow I'd be back in warehouses, observing operations, talking to workers, understanding the problems our next software update needed to solve. I'd be in the office working with my team. I'd be on calls with clients, discussing their challenges and how we could help. The Bloomberg interview would generate more attention, more opportunities, more validation from people who'd dismissed me before. But the real work, the daily, unglamorous work of building better logistics software, that would continue regardless. Because success wasn't about proving people wrong. It was about solving real problems for real clients. It was about building a team that believed in the mission. It was about staying true to the work even when nobody else saw the value. The Bloomberg interview was nice. The billion-dollar valuation was exciting. The vindication with my family was satisfying. But none of it compared to the moment when a warehouse manager called to say our software had saved his team 3 hours of work that day. Or when a distribution center coordinator thanked us for catching an inventory error that would have cost them thousands. Or when a logistics director said our system had made his team's impossible job finally manageable. That was the real success. And I'd known it all along. Even when nobody else did.